I'm looking at the character of Museveni and his leadership. So this means I really want to know, from the time of his political awakening up to now, what do we really have to assess on Museveni?
President Yoweri Museveni, his true political awakening and activism began around 1966. He considered the people from where he came from, which was Ankole, and he asked himself, why is it that the people from where I come from are in practices that working against them? So what he did with a friend of his called Martin Mwesiga, yes, they approached one of the elites at that time and asked him to help them to sensitize the people in northern Ankole against nomadism. So he was telling them that, hey, you know what, you must have dominion, but dominion begins by learning how to control nature.
You were trying to say that his participation in politics or his political awakening began by the awareness that rose in him to help his people.
Any leader worth their salt needs to understand that a leader is only made by the people that he leads. So at that time is when he got to understand his calling that, hey, I need to help the people from where I come from. Unlike so many leaders these days where it's about keeping the people where you come from in poverty, for him he thought, how do I get them out of poverty?
When he took over power, he has been in power for over 40 years. Okay. So we really need to know, is it worth it? Was Museveni a gift to the nation, or are there things to look at? Welcome to Fundisha Youth Platform. My name is Mujuni Reynolds, and today we have a guest in the studio. Kono, introduce yourself to them.
Thank you for having me first and foremost. It's a pleasure to be on this platform. Hello everyone, my name is Kangenoa, and this is Fundisha Podcast. Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so today's discussion, we are looking at 60 years of Museveni. My question is it really worth it? Are the 60 years of Museveni worth it in this season of, we are heading to choose our next leader for 2026 to 2031. Are the 60 years of President Museveni worth it? That's the question I have. I'd like to know. What do you have to say about it?
60 years of President Yoweri Museveni. That's a very interesting question. You see, these days most people ask 40 years of President Yoweri Museveni and the NRM. It's an interesting perspective. But you see, when you say 60 years, it begs, if we speak of 40, then it's important to know what happened before the 40, right?
Very true, very true.
Okay, so 60 years in essence would mean, if let's say NRM's 40 years, which initially started from 1986 to 2026, Jan, right? If you're talking of 60 years, then it means you are counting 20 years behind. So you're starting from 1966.
So what I mean to say is I'm looking at the character of Museveni and his leadership. Okay. So this means I really want to know, from the time of his political awakening up to now, what do we really have to assess on Museveni? Because from the time of his political awakening, he has been influencing leaders in Uganda, and now he has taken over power. When he took over power, he has been in power for over 40 years. Okay. So we really need to know, is it worth it? Was Museveni a gift to the nation, or are there things to look at? And,
okay.
You know? So I would like you to clearly enlighten me on the political awakening because the viewers would want to know, what do you mean by political awakening of Museveni? Are there any other leaders who are in the same system of the awakening?
Okay. This will require us to go into a historical dive, but to answer your first question of political awakening, or what we can call an ideological awakening. So this comes to, first and foremost, understanding the question of politics is just the science of managing people, right? It's the science and the art of managing people in simpler terms. So when we speak of political awakening, it's getting to know what is my position as an individual in the current political space.
Very true.
Now, there's one particular term that's important to know, which is called body politique, which is the political actors in a place. Now, for the viewers out there, and for you to understand what a political awakening is, you also need to understand social hierarchies and social classes. Now, President Yoweri Museveni writes in The Mustard Seed and in many accounts that his true political awakening and activism began around 1966. And it was at a time where he considered the people from where he came from, which was Ankole, Greater Ankole to be specific. And he asked himself, why is it that the people from where I come from are in practices that are working against them? And the practices in this particular case is nomadism. So what he did with a friend of his called Martin Mwesiga, yes. They approached one of the elites at that time and asked him to help them in terms of resources to sensitize the people in northern Ankole against nomadism. Because what they were doing is they were moving from one place to another, running away from diseases like rinderpest, droughts and stuff like that. So he was telling them that, hey, you know what? You need to learn to control nature. You must have dominion, but dominion begins by learning how to control nature.
So you were trying to say that his participation in politics or his political awakening began by the awareness that rose in him to help his people in transit from normal pastoralism to the one that is commercial.
Definitely. Any leader worth their salt needs to understand that a leader is only made by the people that he leads, right? So at that time is when he got to understand his calling that, hey, I need to help the people from where I come from. Unlike so many leaders these days where it's about keeping the people where you come from in poverty, for him, he thought, how do I get them out of poverty? By telling them that, hey, first and foremost, you need to stop this nomadism. You need to get a particular area. You need to get into what we can call the money economy, because he saw that they were the elites who had cows and they were not in the practice of nomadism, and they were actually making wealth. So he was telling them, hey, I've noticed this dynamic is causing you guys to be in poverty. Yeah, so that's it.
That said, because we are looking at him in a perspective of, did he really study? Because there are so many questions. Did Museveni go to school? Some people say he didn't graduate. Some people say he just got power and he has never studied and got a degree. So we want to know, what was his university life like? Well, we'd like to know the university life of Museveni as a politician. Did he participate in the leadership in the university? Were there any cases that we can look into? Because there are a lot of stories that have arose, all from his mastered book. He talks about political organization like the FRONASA that he was in the university. So we really want to know, what did you take from that? What do you take from that?
Okay, so from different accounts, right? Both written accounts and also from interviews from those who had studied with him.
Yeah.
It has been understood that he actually went to university in University of Dar es Salaam. Back then, University of East Africa there was University of Nairobi, Makerere University, and University of Dar es Salaam. At that time, most people of his age were vying to go to university, to Makerere University. So he went to University of Dar es Salaam because there was political activism happening there. And for his time at university, he was the president of University Students African Revolutionary Front, where we've got so many other political actors who later came to become presidents in their countries, like John Dimabior Garang. And during that time, they had so many Pan-African individuals who came to have lectures there. So those were his, grassroots days as a student. And those are the things which shaped his particular mindset when it comes to Pan-Africanism, when it comes to patriotism. Yes, so University Students Revolutionary Front was the student movement that he was pushing at that time, under the auspice, if I'm to say, of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. Yes, and even during his time at university, I believe he led a contingent of students, a delegation of students that went to the liberated zones of the Makonde in Mozambique, right? Where they went to see how Frelimo, right, which was the guerrilla movement at that time, the Pan-African guerrilla movement at that time, that was trying to fight for its people, okay? Yes, and to remove the colonial situation that was happening there.
It's not like a question, because you're now talking about Pan-Africanism, you're talking about his awakening as a Pan-Africanist, you know, and he had a group of leaders that he was working with in these liberations. Would like to know because I'm having an audience here. I'm not sure if they understand what Pan-Africanism is, or they understand to be nationals. So you need to explain to them an overview. We can share with them what Pan-Africanism is,
all right,
and what it really means in layman's language.
Pan-Africanism is the political and socio-economic de-enslavement of the African people, irrespective of their tribe, irrespective of their race. Okay? And for you to understand it, you need to understand the different generations of Pan-Africanists. Pan-Africanism essentially began with the Black American movements, right? And the movements in the West Indies. You cannot speak of Pan-Africanism without speaking of people like W.E.B. Du Bois, without speaking about people like Sekou Touré, without speaking about people like Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. But they're different generations. Now, for the interest of time, I'm not going to go into the first two, but I'll concentrate on the third and the fourth. The third generation of Pan-Africanists are the ones who vied for independence, who fought for independence, right?
Yeah.
But then, the fourth generation, okay, if I'm to give examples of the third generation, that's where we have Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, Abdel Nasser in Egypt. Now, looking at the fourth generation Pan-Africans, that's where President Yoweri Museveni comes in.
Yeah.
Now, every Pan-African generation understood their generational mandate.
Yeah.
The third generation understood they were fighting for independence, and they were going against the colonial machinations of that time. Yeah. Now, the fourth generation knew that we got independence, but we didn't receive full independence. We received what we call flag independence. And by flag independence, I mean we received independence, but it wasn't benefiting the people and the general populace, right?
Yeah.
It was, the states which were formed were what we call colonial states. And in order for you to understand that, you need to go back to understanding things like the Berlin Conference, right? Where there was a scramble and partition of Africa.
Yeah.
Now, his generation understood one thing, that their generational mandate was to dismantle the colonial state and put Uganda specifically on a proper footing of socioeconomic transformation.
So are you trying to say that for all these 40 years he has been in power, he has been dismantling the colonial state? Because we have so many questions, and the youth out there have so many questions. They are concentrating on long stay in power, saying the man has been in power for so long. You know, now we began to hear of Museveni 64 before even 1986 when he assumed power. So we really want to know, like, what exactly has he been doing in these 40 years? Can he clearly explain? Do we have an account to say that he has been really dismantling this? And is there a trackable explanation according to the four major mandates of a government? Can you break down, before you actually tell the viewers about this, can you break down the four mandates of the government and explain them? And in relation to what Museveni is doing, can we really see that he has been a Pan-Africanist, as he says? Can we really say that he dismantled the colonial influence in Uganda with all this that is happening right now?
Well, so your question, if I'm to paraphrase it properly, is 40 years. Are we still dismantling the colonial state? Okay, so the National Resistance Movement, NRA. Okay, and the for you to understand the National Resistance Movement, which is the party he leads, you need to understand its genesis, which is the NRA, which was a guerrilla movement, right? Now, one of the things I've gotten to appreciate is revolution is not an event, it's a process. Now, you've asked me 4 things that every government must put in place to ensure that its people are well taken care of and prosper. The 4 things I can think of head right now is, 1, every government must ensure that there is peace and security of people and property. 2, every government must ensure that it puts in place inclusive political and socioeconomic institutions. Number 3, every government must put policies in place that enable the population to be healthy, vibrant, and productive. And then the 4th one is development. And when you're speaking of development specifically, you're talking of infrastructural development, which is both economic infrastructural development and social infrastructural development. Okay. Now, in order for us to do that, we need to create a scorecard based on those 4. And we start giving the NRM under the leadership of President Yoweri Museveni a scorecard. So let's begin with 1, peace and security of people and property, right?
Yes.
So NRM takes over power in 1986. From 1986 to 2007, it was dealing with the counter-revolutionary insurgencies. Alice Lakwena, Eric Odwa, Joseph Kony, ADF, right? To the point that 2007 marked the first time that Uganda was peaceful border to border in over 600 years. 600 years. And that's referring to the collapse of the Chwezi dynasty.
Wait a minute. Are you trying to say we did not have peace for over 600 years until Museveni policies from 1986 to 2007?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. That's exactly what I'm saying. Now, the dynamic of our security situation in Uganda, or in this, Uganda specifically, as a country, begins around the 1300s. We're talking 1350, with the collapse of the Chwezi dynasty. When the Chwezi dynasty collapsed, this place was ushered into a perpetual period of chaos that lasted over 600 years. Now, 2007 is when the Uganda People's Defense Forces decisively got Kony out of the borders, Joseph Kony out of the borders of Uganda, and peace was assured border to border. Remember, peace is the foundation, the panacea of development. You cannot speak of development without peace, which means if you are to begin articulating Uganda's economic transformation, it will be only right that you begin from 2008, because 2007 was the time when peace was there and you can start speaking of economy. Okay. Yes. So that's the first, peace and peace of people, peace of people and property. Now, when we come to the bit of the second point being development, and specifically economic infrastructural development and social infrastructural development, the best way I can put it is, it used to take 3 days to move from Kampala to Chigezi, from Kampala to Kabale. Now it takes about 6 hours. And that was because the NRM put policies in place after taking care of peace and security to ensure that roads are built that connect every corner of this country to the city, right?
Very true.
And then we look at things like the ICT backbone that was put in place. My background is in software engineering, and I know so many friends of mine who we studied with who are working for US companies right here. Because if you're to notice, from 2008 is when we started seeing a lot of foreign direct investment that began to pour into this country, right? So we're looking at roads, we're looking at ICT backbone, we're looking at water. When it comes to the social infrastructures, we're looking at the hospitals that have been built from the sub-county, from the parish to the sub-county to the county level to the districts. We're looking at the schools that have been built, the seed schools that have been built by government. To the point that right now, one of our comparative advantages as Uganda is labor force. Unfortunately, that labor force is bleeding to the Middle East. But why that happens is because we've got so many products of UPE and UPC, issues notwithstanding. Now, when it comes to the bit of a government putting in place inclusive political and socioeconomic institutions, we can talk of things like, for political institutions, we can speak of the local council system, the LC system, from LC1 at the village level all the way to LC5 at the district. The LC system started as resistance councils, right? And these resistance councils were during the Bush War era from 1981 to 86, those 5 years. When the NRM government comes and takes over, it looks at democratizing leadership down to the grassroots. That stuff wasn't there before. And it's a system that we take for granted. When it comes to putting policies in place to ensure that the population is healthy, vibrant, and productive, we can look at, I believe it was 1996. At that time, Honorable Ruhakana Rugunda was the Minister of Health. The NRM government began the mass inoculation campaign. And it is due to that mass inoculation and immunization campaign against the deadly diseases that right now as we speak, 70% of Ugandans are below the age of 30. Right? Before, if you ask our grandparents, it used to be a numbers game. They had to give birth to so many kids, because you never knew how many would survive past the age of 5, past the age of 13. Yes.
Speaking of that, there's been a question that we have as a youth, you've talked about democracy. So democracy has Museveni has introduced policies that the LC1 system that allows everyone to participate from the village level to the district level. So we are looking at the issue of voting. And we have assessed the previous NRM primaries that have happened, and you've heard of what has happened.
Yes.
We are looking at bureaucrats and aristocrats coming in, entering into the system. And as a political analyst, I would say, is that good? Is NRM still in line with what Museveni started? Are we still moving with Museveni, or NRM is taking another direction? We're not bringing in a word that we are attacking. We're just assessing. We just want to know. Because people are preparing to vote. By the way, we encourage all Ugandans, all the youth, to go and vote. Whoever is registered for voting should prepare to go and vote on the 15th. Your vote really matters. This is the reason why your vote really matters. We really need to know our next leaders. We really need to know, is NRM still in line with Museveni's points of policies, or there is something we're not really understanding the system right now.
Okay,
we need to understand whether our government is going to continue progressing, because there's a question of too long stay in power. We have tried to break down the 4. We haven't completed, but we're going to come back to that with time. We haven't completed breaking down the 4 mandates of a government. But on this issue of democracy, I really want to know. And I know the viewers also want to know, because they are confused, NRM and Museveni and Patriotic League.
Wow.
What do you have to say about that?
Now, you've just opened a can of worms, I must say. But it looks like you're trying to say that there seems to be a divergence between the two, right?
Yeah.
Now, in order for me to answer that, I'm going to make an attempt, but in order for me to answer that, I think I need to make some illustrations, right?
Okay.
I need to bring some illustrations to bear. and we will have participation from our viewers there. So to all our viewers who are out there, comment, tell us what you think, okay, from our discussions here. I'm going to illustrate a particular principle that is based off the study of societies, movements, empires, civilizations, you name it, okay, companies. And it's a concept of the rise and the fall, right?
Yeah.
Whenever an organization is beginning, it begins with what we call a visionary, right? A visionary or a prophet. Now, this is the individual that casts the vision, the individual that shows others that a new frontier, the new possibilities, right? Different from what is happening here.
So in this case, the visionary is Museveni.
Yes. Okay. And why would we call him a visionary in a sense? When you look at when he began, for example, Front for National Salvation, its founding principle was dismantling of the colonial state and putting Uganda on a proper footing of socioeconomic transformation. Socioeconomic transformation, now let's take that. The vision was Uganda that's in a golden age and that harnesses its wealth for everyone, right? In a sense that every Ugandan has the capacity, is enabled to get themselves out of poverty. And we're going to go into that in a bit. But after the visionary, we have what we call the barbarian, right? Now, the barbarian it's a leadership style that comes in during conflict and conquest, okay? Then we have got what we call the builder and explorer, right? At this phase, you move away from conflict and conquest and you go into collaboration. And then finally, we've got the administrator, okay? Administrators. Now, this is when you're creating a new era. Like, for example, when the NRM came in, it started as a guerrilla force because they started as the National Resistance Army, which was the military wing. But then we had the political wing, which was the National Resistance Movement. And it came with a 10-point program where given time, which I'll go into it in depth.
Yeah.
Now, when it came with that, President Yoweri Museveni, as the visionary, came and cast a vision, right? But then, in order to change the status quo, there had to be a revolution that takes place. And there had to be barbarians that came in, right? In order to change that, to the point that 1986 is the watershed moment, okay? Where we say, hey, enough of the colonial engine running, right? We need to dismantle the colonial state. So for the colonial state to be dismantled, you had to get barbarians, people who believe so much in the vision of the visionary and are willing to have it implemented effectively. Sure. Then the builders and explorers are now the technical people that come in. These are the people who you see. A classic example could be Alan Kagina, for example, when it comes to infrastructural development, right? Yeah. These are the guys who come in, the technical individuals that come in and bring the vision to light. But then remember, when we have created a new status quo, we need structure. That's where the administrators come in. The problem normally comes when you have two individuals that come as well. When you've got the bureaucrats. Right? And the aristocrats.
As you go to that point,
yes,
you shed something. You will bring to light what a bureaucrat and an aristocrat really looks like. You just give us a hint or two.
Okay, so I might not give local examples, but
you can give international examples.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what bureaucrats are individuals who come and they join a system, take on it, hijack it for control without the understanding of the vision of the visionary, and they tend to sacrifice the people that actually do work. So it becomes they turn a particular organization into a place where if you're the type that looks for results, you become an enemy, right? And then aristocrats are those who are just not in touch with the people down in the grassroots. They are not in touch with the peasants. If it's a company, they're individuals who are not in touch with the factory workers on the factory floor. Now, why I'm printing this, to answer your question, every organization must understand this because it's an inevitable cycle that happens.
Sure.
Now, the question is, how do you go against it? In order for you to go against this, you must have what we call synergists. Okay? So synergists are the kind that come, remind people that, hey, you know what? This was the original vision. A synergist, for example, if it comes to NRM, is supposed to say, hey, what was the 10-point program initially? What does NRM stand for currently? I mean, you're looking at democracy, you're looking at Pan-Africanism, you're looking at socioeconomic transformation. The 4 points, right?
Yeah.
That NRM is fronting. But it's not just speaking them. It is actually believing in them from a place of principle that these points can actually create the kind of transformation that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Because currently, there's a war, to be honest.
Sure,
there's a war. And the war is a war of the mind. Uganda, we are in a golden age in a sense that we have the basics of development. We've got peace and security.
Yeah.
You can start your business anywhere. I mean, recently as I was coming here, I was looking at the posters of most of the political party people, right? And I noticed that there are some posters where, and this is both opposition and current, different, across the political space. But I noticed there was an old poster the first time they came on, and there's a way they looked. And now the new poster, they've got fat cheeks and stuff like that. So you can see that we are in a space where, yes, any fool can leave. Any fool can leave. It's not like other places where if you're not the type that thinks you'll eventually die out. Most people who leave Uganda and they go and they work in the Middle East or they go and work elsewhere, when they come back, they get to appreciate the kind of liberty that we have. They come to appreciate the kind of opportunities that we have. And that's why it's very important, most especially for the youth, to understand that we are in a golden age. The moment you have peace and security, and Uganda, for the very first time, 2007 being the first time we were having peace, border to border, it means that this is a golden age that we must take advantage of. Are there challenges? Yes, they are. But at the end of the day, the question is, can we work with what we already have right now?
So we were still on the graph, the synergies and the difference between the synergies and the bureaucrats and the aristocrats.
Yes.
Because we are looking at President Museveni.
Yes.
Acknowledging
that
there is corruption.
Yes.
Acknowledging that there is corruption in the system.
Yes.
There's a lot of rondery and all that.
Yes.
And he's looking at erasing such issues as a visionary.
Yes.
But are we trying to say that he is failing to address the issue of aristocrats and bureaucrats? Because we are looking at these bureaucrats and the aristocrats that we're talking about. So to say, the sons of the big, the sons of the rich, or who do not really understand the vision from inside to portray what we're really going for as Uganda, who are making Ugandans miss out on the golden era. What is there for this government to do, we want to know what should the synergies be able to do, because we need to sensitize the youth out there as to take on that route. Yeah.
First and foremost, corruption is endemic. It's in government, true that. But you see, corruption is a culture. Corruption goes all the way down to the schools. If you're to study the history of corruption in Uganda, it goes back to even the colonial era, where I remember we were interviewing some historicals, and we were asking them in
Capture.
Yes.
Capture.
Yes, we were in Kapchora, and we were having a talk with some Fronasa historicals, and they were telling us that corruption started a very long time in Uganda. There used to be the time when they used to ask for hard tax, and the guys who would come, they'll ask them for chamisana. And why am I bringing that to your attention? If we don't understand the genesis of corruption, we will fail to understand how it works, where it begins, and how it metastasizes from one generation to another. Eventually, even if we were to remove the NRM government right now and bring in another government, it will still continue, and we'll be backing up another tree and saying, oh, the new government is the one which is corrupt. The old one was corrupt, yeah, but this one is more corrupt. You see it even in primary schools or in high schools. If kids are going to vie for political office and they come and give you sweets, I'm sure you guys during your time must have been, yes, you gave guys sweets. That's a form of corruption. That's a form of corruption. So we need to deal with it. I think corruption is a generational thing.
So on that point,
yes,
there has been a lot of comparison between, because we're looking at the 40 years of Museveni.
Yes.
There's been a lot of comparison between President Museveni and Idi Amin.
Yes.
So to say, Idi Amin did way too much than what Museveni has done over the 40 years. And we're just trying to find out. I know some viewers are beginning to find out that he has been a visionary.
Yes.
And they would like to know, does that comparison really stand? Does it stand from your point of view? And also, the people are preparing to vote, and we are trying to, I for one have been trying to articulate and try to see what these other political parties stand for, and I have not yet clearly seen a vision. Most of them are saying it is long stay in power, we really need change, and they cannot explain after removing the long stay in power, then what? So we really want to know concerning that issue. What's your mind? What do you think? Okay,
I think I'll summarize all that in one thing. The objective way for you to choose what political party you're going to support, you have to ask yourself one thing. What is their ideological orientation?
Sure.
What ideas do they stand for? What's the sustainability of these ideas? Have they been tried and tested? What results do they have based on what they're talking about? When we look at, for example, the late President Idi Amin, what I'll ask you is, what was his ideological orientation? That's the best way I would ask that question. What was his ideological orientation?
Because we tend to look at him as one of the most patriotic leaders.
Yes, but we need to define that. We need to define what was his ideological orientation. What message was he sending out there?
Uganda as an independent state. He was his message, as I would say, the one that I clearly remember or know, is he wanted Uganda to be independent from other colonialists. But one of his policies where he had to expel all the Asians from the businesses in Uganda. He wanted an independent Uganda in terms of trade. That's what I remember.
Okay.
About it,
Okay. Now you've brought up the issue of expelling of the Asians. What was the economic consequence of expelling of those Asians?
Of course, it was negative. It was really negative.
That's why a leader, you see.
But there was a positive consequence, but also there was a
yes.
negative.
Objectively speaking,
yeah.
A leader is judged by the generations that come after. A leader is not judged by what they say, but the consequences of their actions. One of the things I told you was, currently 70% of Uganda's population is below the age of 30. That is something that is known, statistically speaking. Currently, 33.1% of households are in subsistence economy. That's the reason why we are in lower middle income status, right?
Okay.
Always ask, what is the ideological orientation? What is the message? What are they going to do? I told you when President Yoweri Museveni began for NASA, it was to dismantle, its founding principle was dismantling of the colonial state and putting Uganda on a proper footing of socio-economic transformation. The same message which is here up to now. Okay? So the one of comparison between Idi Amin and President Yoweri Museveni, I think that's just one that is done out of naivete. But go into history and ask yourself, what were the consequences of his 8-year rule? And imagine if he stayed for more years. Imagine if he was here for 40 years. The question is, what are the consequences? Okay? And what was the other question again?
Comparing the current political parties.
Yes. The political parties. I think opposition political parties have exposed themselves in essence. You see, if you cannot unite, if you are fighting at an opposition level, if you cannot unite yourselves as opposition, you've already failed before you even began. You're already exposing yourself. You know, you shall know them by their fruits.
True.
There are political parties that I'm not going to mention, but I'm sure you know them, who started by saying, we're removing a dictator, until they turned on themselves. Not one, not two, right? In essence, if you're to compare the rulership of Idi Amin and that of President Yoweri Museveni, the question I would ask you is, what was the demographic landscape at that time? How many peasants did we have at that time? What was going on? How many were in the money economy? Okay. How many were living from hand to mouth? Okay. In 2010, 68.9% of households were in the subsistence economy, which means they were living from hand to mouth. Okay. Now that changed in a sense that by 2025, as we speak right now, 33.1% of households are in the subsistence economy, which means they do subsistence farming, living from hand to mouth. That's how we speak of Uganda entering into middle income status. Okay?
True.
And what we're saying here is, what is the ideological position of the opposition members? If you listen to many of them say, we are removing a dictator. You're removing a dictator, then what? For example, if I'm to ask you, what's the ideological position of NUP or FDC or PFF, or what do they stand for? What are they going to do?
Most of them, they're thinking of removing the dictator.
Then what?
I watched a clip of one of them saying, I'll not be so specific. He said, we shall see then after removing the dictator. We shall then talk about what next. So I don't know.
You see,
that's very important for the viewers out there and the youth to really understand what each one of them stands for and what are the plans they have for us.
Yes, it is, because without vision, the people perish.
Okay.
The viewers need to understand that every citizen has a right to vote. True. And you have a right to vote for whatever candidate, right, you feel holds your interests at heart. Okay? Now, if you're to ask which party has a clear program that you can hold them accountable to, I've just told you in 2010, 36.8% of households were in subsistence farming. As we speak right now, 33.1% of households are in subsistence farming. That's the reason why we are in middle income status, albeit lower middle income status. And the NRM's campaign message has been making the qualitative leap to upper middle income status. And what does that mean? We will make the qualitative leap as Uganda to upper middle income status when we get the remaining 33.1% of households that are in subsistence farming into the money economy. And what does money economy mean? Wealth. Yes, making wealth. Where can we get your grandmother, your mother, your uncle, your brother, who is in the village right now, who is working to feed himself, but is not putting any money in the pocket? There was something you spoke about where you said that the comparison is that Idi Amin was more Pan-African because he chased the Asians and confiscated their property. Unless you're, okay, not so many people understand the dynamics of economics.
True.
You don't just yank things off there without thinking about the ripple effects. One of the things that the national resistance movement did was to return the Asians' property back to them. And many people did not understand why that was done. One, they saw the current situation on ground and knew that the fastest way to fast track development was to get cheap, patient credit. Most of these investors get credit at a rate of 2% per annum. If I'm to tell you right now, the cheapest credit you can find in Uganda fluctuates between 11.5 to 16.5%.
Yeah.
And that is a salary loan. How many people can have access to a salary loan? I'm sure the viewers know many people, or even themselves, who have tried to get a loan. You know how much percentage they've been telling you about.
Very true.
You get,
Very
yes. But then the NRM is coming through and saying, hey, we have put these different government policies in place. For example, the youth livelihood, the PDM, the different funds that the government has put. What it's trying to do is solve that issue, that yes, when we returned the Asians' property, we created investor confidence in Uganda, that investors can come here and invest knowing that their capital is not going to go to waste. Okay. Right?
Yes.
Right? Now, when their capital does not go to waste, what does that mean? We fast track development. What would have taken us 20 years, we can do it in 10. Okay, so with that, when development is fast tracked, it means that we can now move from being a lower income economy to a higher income economy. However, there's been the question of many people are not feeling it in their pockets. The response to that is, can we create cheap patient credit and bring it to the grassroots, to the different people? And that's where these different funds come in. The problem is the leaders, the bureaucrats, the aristocrats who are in government are not sensitizing the people on ground and telling them that when you eat the PDM money, you are eating your seed.
So you're trying to say the PDM money is as one of those solutions that we have to cheap credit, to accessing cheap credit.
Yes, what I'm saying is poverty is in the mind.
It's in the mind.
And for as long as we don't deal with the minds of the people on the grassroots and educate them that we are in a golden age, this money is a boost, it's your seed, it is what's supposed to take you out of poverty, right? The moment you eat it, you're eating your seed, which means you will not have harvest when the time comes.
I understand you.
Yes.
I really understand you. And viewers, you can give us your comments on what you understand. And I clearly see that you're trying to say that Museveni has an outstanding vision compared to these other leaders. So we're going to get into that with time. We're going to get into that. I would like to conclude by saying this debate has not ended. We are still having more and more information to share. And we're going to talk about the 7 points of NRM. We're going to talk about the 7 points of NRM in detail, breaking down each to the easiest way that our viewers can understand and see, is it worth it? Because we are going in a time where the president is saying we are protecting the gains. Is it worth it? What gains are we protecting? What gains are we protecting? The people want to know, what gains are we protecting? So we are going to get into that in a few, and I would like you to keep tuned, and we enjoy as we get to know what really gains we are protecting, and is it really true that there are some gains that the 40 years of Museveni, are there any gains that we have, and are we protecting?
Okay, what I can tell all the viewers out there is every country, not just Uganda, goes through a phase like this, where you're given the opportunity to bring your leaders to book and to vote. And this is how you express your civic responsibility. This is a civic responsibility. I'd like to encourage each and everyone out there, on the 15th of January, go and vote for your leaders. Go and vote for your leaders. But as you vote, ask yourself, one, what has my leader done for me as an individual? What are the benefits? What is their message? What is their program? What will they do for me? How do I bring them to account? Because at the end of the day, it's not just a question of excitement. It's not a question of fear. And all those who are saying that what happened in Libya will happen here, if that's the narrative, then it means that as a leader, you do not have the mind of the people, because a leader is nothing without his people. And if a leader can send his people to become fodder, to become food for the fire, in order for them to go and climb up, you need to ask yourself, are they worth bringing in? On the 15th of Jan, go exercise your civic duty and vote. Thank you.